join us for the Pledge of Allegiance. Matt, you want to start us with a roll call?
Counselor Windorf,
Here.
Halter, here. West,
Here.
Savage,
Here.
Shalata,
Here.
Zadi,
Here.
Demus,
Here.
Tate,
Here.
Mayor Como.
Here. Councilman, first order of business, we have the approval of the minutes from the special city council meeting December 2nd, 2019, and city council meeting minutes of December 3rd, 2019. I'd entertain a motion to approve. Councilman Shalata?
I move. Second.
Do we have a motion to approve the minutes from these two meetings? Do we have a second?
Second.
Second has been called. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Just gonna move us into the appointments section of our agenda. We have several counselors. Item number one, Mr. President, members of the council, I'd submit the name of Stephanie Harsha to serve first term on the Beautification Tree Committee.
Council, Stephanie Harsha has stepped up for her first term on the Beautification Tree Committee. Do we have a motion to approve?
So moved, Mr. President.
Thank you. Do we have a second?
Second.
Second, all right. Roll call, please.
Counselor Halter,
Yes.
West,
Yes.
Savage,
Yes.
Shalata,
Yes.
Zadi, Demus,
Yes.
Tate,
Yes.
Windorf.
Yes.
Mayor Como, you have your appointment.
Thank you, Mr. President, members of the council. Item number two, Mr. President, I submit the name of Clark Robinson, served his fifth term on the Joint Powers Combined Communication Board.
Council, Clark Robinson has stepped up for a fifth term. What is that? Is that 20 years?
We can't lose that knowledge.
15? Okay. Sorry. For the Joint Powers Combined Communications Board, do we have a motion to approve?
So moved, Mr. President.
Thank you. Second?
Second.
Thank you. Roll call, please.
Counselor West,
Yes.
Savage,
Yes.
Shalata,
Yes.
Zadi,
Yes.
Demus,
Yes.
Tate,
Yes.
Windorf,
Yes.
Halter, sorry.
Mayor, you have your appointment.
Thank you, Mr. President, members of the council. Item number three, Mr. President, members of the council, I submit the name of Blake Manis to serve his first term Planning and Zoning Commission.
Council, Blake Manis has stepped up for a first time on P&Z. Do we have a motion to approve?
So moved, Mr. President.
Thank you. Second?
Second.
All right, roll call, please.
Counselor Savage,
Yes.
Shalata,
Yes.
Zadi,
Yes.
Demus,
Yes.
Tate,
Yes.
Windorf,
Yes.
Halter,
Yes.
West.
Yes.
Mayor Como, you have your appointment.
Thank you, Mr. President, members of the council. Item number four, Mr. President, I submit the name of Charlie Van Over to serve his second term on the Police Civil Service Commission.
Council, Charlie Vanover has stepped up for a second term on the Police Civil Service Commission. Do we have a motion to approve? To approve. Thank you. Do we have a second?
Second.
All right, roll call, please.
Counselor Shalata,
Yes.
Zadi,
Yes.
Demus,
Yes.
Tate,
Yes.
Windorf,
Yes.
Halter, West,
Yes.
Savage.
Yes. Mayor Como, you have your appointment.
Thank you, Mr. President, members of the council. Item number five, Mr. President, I submit the name of Kathy Flansburgh to serve first term Rock Springs Historical Museum Board.
Council, Kathy Flansburgh has stepped up for a first term on the Historic Museum Board. Do we have a motion to approve?
So moved, Mr. President.
Thank you. Second?
Second.
Second, roll call, please.
Counselor Zadi,
Yes.
Demus,
Yes.
Tate,
Yes.
Windorf,
Yes.
Halter, West,
Yes.
Savage,
Yes.
Shalata.
Yes.
Mayor Como, you have your appointments.
Thank you, Mr. President, members of the council. Just gonna bring us on to our presentations, proclamations. I'm honored to have an Eagle Scout here with us tonight, Seth. Can Seth come down to the microphone, if you would? About what Seth's been doing to earn his Eagle Scout, and tell us the project that he's. Seth, will you make sure that microphone's on? You might need to push the button. Speak close to the mic if you could, and tell us what you've been doing.
So I have been creating raised garden beds for like
Able, right?
able hands for adults who don't really know how to do stuff, and with this they can like have a control over something, so then they can feel better. And
Well, that's exciting. But look at those badges. That's quite an accomplishment to get your Eagle Scout, I would say.
Yeah.
So we thought it'd be a good idea. Who do you have here with you today?
I have my mom
Trying to be
over
quiet
there.
in the back.
Yeah, my mom and my sister over there.
Well, we have a proclamation I'd like to issue on your behalf for the hard work you've done. And our proclamation, City of Rock Springs reads, whereas the Boy Scouts of America, established in February 1910, have been dedicated to providing educational programs for boys and young adults, helping them build character, developing their personal fitness and training in the responsibilities of participating in citizenship. And Seth Atkinson has attained the designation of Eagle Scout, Scouting's highest award. And Seth has devoted himself to serving others throughout his membership in the Boy Scouts of America. And Seth has demonstrated a commitment to meet challenges with enthusiasm and confidence through planning and leading others in service to his community by designing and building garden boxes for the disabled adult organization, Able Hands. Now therefore be it resolved that Mayor Timothy A. Como, the City Council, and the City of Rock Springs extend with great pride their sincere congratulations for achieving this highest of scouting awards, which symbolizes the American ideal of good citizenship. And be it further resolved that the City of Rock Springs wishes Seth Atkinson much success in all his future endeavors. I think you're going to go far. Well done. We need to
Thank
give a
you.
round of applause. Keep up the great work, and we're going to zap a little picture, and we're going to get your mom and sister down here because they're trying to hide out in the back. Come on down. Oh, we're glad you could come down today. That's exciting. Keep up the good work. Okay, this is going to get us into the public hearings section of our agenda. And item number one, we have a public hearing on an application for a transfer of retail liquor license from K Street LLC located at 131 K Street, Rock Springs, Wyoming, of which we'll take action under new business item number one. Is there anyone wishing to speak on this issue? Hearing none. Item number two, a public hearing on a request filed by Rob DiBernardi of 4D Development for consideration of an amended PUD development plan for the Sweetwater Station addition to increase the number of planned lots within the undeveloped Sweetwater Station Phase 2 area from 28 lots to 55 lots, of which will take action under Resolution 2019-163. And I'd like to invite our city planner, Laura. She's here already. give us an overview of what we're looking at. Oh, thanks.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. Laura Lee, I'm the city planner for City of Rock Springs. I'm going to provide a presentation tonight. This is the public hearing for the amended Sweetwater Station PUD. My goals of the presentation, number one, to kind of give a general overview of what a PUD is and the criteria for them. Secondly, review the rural estate zoning district and the history behind that. And then also summarize the history of the Sweetwater Station as a PUD. That will bring us up to where we are today. We will review the proposed amendments, and I will also provide the recommendation of the Planning and Zoning Commission. So the authority to regulate PUDs comes from Wyoming State Statutes 15-1-601 through 603. These are the general city authority to zone statutes. What they do is they give municipalities the authority to create and designate different areas within the city called zoning districts. Each of those unique zoning districts has different characteristics such as lot size requirements, density, setbacks, height restrictions, and allowable uses. Within the city code itself, sections 13-812, which is the PUD Plan Unit Development Overlay Zone. I'm just going to tonight call them PUDs, so I don't have to say that over and over again. So PUD Overlay Zone, and section 13-902, which outlines the procedures for PUD approval. So to begin with, what is a PUD? So a PUD is a zoning overlay district. You could think of a PUD as basically a mini zoning district that overlays a piece of property, which is why the procedures that relate to plan unit developments, which we will go over later, correlate to the procedures actually for rezoning property. Very similar process for each of them. A PUD is used as an alternative to the conventional zoning that you see within our area. Residential zoning districts, for instance, we have 7 of them, RE zone, and then R1 through R6 zoning, and each of those have criteria. However, a PUD, if you have a PUD overlay on top of it, it allows for deviations from those requirements of the underlying zone. You can have different lot sizes than the underlying zone would require, density requirements, different setbacks. However, they are tied to a specific development, and a development plan gets recorded for that development that outlines what those new requirements are for that. Again, think of a little mini zoning district in that area. However, what I have underlined here, even though a PUD allows deviation from the underlying zoning, it has to be consistent with the comprehensive plan. Several sections of the comprehensive plan, one in particular is the land use plan map. And in the land use plan map, it provides, similar to zoning, it provides a breakdown. This is a low density area, this is a high density residential area, this area is for commercial. And in each of those designations, it outlines what zoning districts are compatible within that zoning, within that designation. For example, density increases. So out of the PUD sections, section 13-812B4 states that the number of dwelling units allowed may be flexible relative to the number of dwelling units per acre that would otherwise be permitted by the zoning regulations applicable to the site. However, next paragraph down, the total number of dwelling units allowed in a PUD shall be consistent with the land use plan element of the city's comprehensive plan, and in no case can it exceed more than 10% of that designated in the comprehensive plan. So although it allows deviation, there's still a framework for which you have to follow. An example, let me give, would be, I see Blue Sage Way, that's the one that comes to mind, Johnson Addition PUD. That is, if I remember right, an R2 zoning district. Well, in an R2 zoning district, we only allow single-family dwellings being that that was developed as a plan unit development in a low-density designated area, it allows for anything that falls under the RE, R1, or R2, or R3 zoning districts. Duplexes are allowed in an R3 zoning district. That's how that was allowed to be approved in that. So again, think of a PUD as a mini zoning district on top of the underlying zoning district. From an administrative point of view, since there are deviations from the underlying zoning district requirements, as a staff member, when we do reviews for zoning, site plans, etc., within a PUD, rather than turning to the actual zoning ordinance, we instead turn to the development plan for that PUD. The development plan is going to outline the regulations that are now going to apply to that development rather than what was outlined in the zoning ordinance. The PUD development plan actually supersedes the zoning ordinance in this case. Items on the development plan that are reviewed by the city are those that fall under those statutory requirements that I previously went over. For example, setbacks, principal and accessory structure setbacks, allowable lot coverage, building height restrictions. Some PUDs even go as far as actually outlining this is the building footprint that you have to build in, and this is the shape your building needs to be. And it has to be within this little square. I mean, some do that. In the case of the Sweetwater Station, it does not. So there's just setback requirements listed. Through the PUD process, there are also other criteria that exceed the city's requirements that could become part of the PUD. Example of these would be construction types of buildings, architectural appearance of buildings, landscaping requirements. Right now, we do not have residential landscaping requirements as a city, but they could be placed in there as an extra requirement for a PUD. Minimum size of housing is another one, maintenance, etc. And whenever there are these extra requirements tied to a PUD, the enforcement of those requirements falls under the jurisdiction of a homeowners association through restrictive covenants that are then tied to that homeowners association. Again, we have our scope of authority that we function under zoning. Anything in excess of that is generally regulated through an outside agency, a homeowners association. City does not enforce covenants, so. Steps for approval. Very similar to a subdivision process. For a PUD, you start with a concept plan, which is a very informal review of the plan. Goes to the Planning and Zoning Commission. And then we move on to the preliminary development plan. This is the main step of a PUD process. This is the formal public hearing review. Being that a PUD is more of a mini zoning district, the process of a PUD basically it mirrors the zone change process. It goes through public hearing at Planning and Zoning, and then public hearing in front of council, which is what we have tonight. And then after all that is approved, then the final development plan, which also goes through Planning and Zoning and City Council just as new business rather than another public hearing. The ordinance does provide criteria for amending a plan unit development. There's two different procedures. There's a minor amendment, which would be slightly modifying building locations and things like that due to unforeseen circumstances. And then there's a major amendment. A major amendment is where there's going to be changes in density, change in street layout, changes in uses, anything like that. If there is a major amendment, that triggers the development to go back to the preliminary development plan stage where all those things were worked out originally. And that is what we have here tonight. Very similar. That is absolutely no different than if this were just a standard subdivision. In a standard subdivision, when a developer gets to a final plat, that final plat needs to match the approved preliminary plat. If it doesn't, then at that time, they also have to go back to a preliminary plat and start at that phase again. So very similar. And that leads me to the next slide. PUDs can come in two forms. A PUD can be one large piece of property with multiple buildings and multiple uses on it, remaining as one property. A few members of the governing body may remember, it was never developed, but the Bluff Senior Estates housing. It was going to be one big property with a lot of smaller buildings on there, one ownership. But a PUD can also include division of the land. When that happens, the PUD simultaneously goes through the subdivision process. So not only are you creating a development plan or a mini zoning district for this property, you're also going through the subdivision process to create legal lots that could be sold to individual property owners. Since they're similar processes, we run them through concurrently. So in reviewing planning at developments, the zoning ordinance clearly outlines different things that are to be looked at when considering a planning at development. First, the interrelationship of the plan. I'm missing a page, sorry. Sorry, missing a page here. Interrelationship with the plan elements to the conditions on and off the property. Again, very important, the conformance to the city's comprehensive plan. That's first and foremost the number one thing that you look at when looking at a PUD. You look at the impact of the plan on existing traffic and parking conditions, adequacy of the plan with respect to land use, pedestrian vehicular ingress and egress, and building location and height. Other things would be landscaping. As I mentioned, the city zoning ordinance only requires landscaping for commercial properties. We do not require landscaping for residential properties, but it could be an additional requirement to a PUD. We look at utilities, site drainage, open space, grading, screening, setbacks, and other related matters. So moving on to the history of the rural estate zoning. Initial discussion of the rural estate zoning actually started back in 2001. We were approached by Dr. Spicer. He owned 80 acres of land that was actually outside of the city at the time. And he was interested in developing that land for residential use with minimum number of horses being allowed on those lots. The city at the time did not have any zoning district that allowed horses. There were a couple pockets of some grandfathered horse use within the town, but no zoning ordinance allowed horse use. So we looked at it from the perspective of what do we need to have in place to allow horses so that we can move this forward. It was not necessarily about the size at the time, because lots, we do not have maximum lot sizes. If Dr. Spicer just wanted to develop a subdivision with 5-acre lot sizes, that would have been permitted in an R1 zoning district, because we don't have maximum lot size. We have minimum lot size requirements, but not maximum. The change in the ordinance was a result of the use of having horses within this property. So early 2002, I actually presented very preliminary language to the Planning and Zoning Commission and started the discussion on this with them. To be honest, the Planning and Zoning Commission, they were not fans of even moving it forward. There was a lot of concerns with allowing horses in town. We didn't want to turn into, more rural area. We didn't want horses in the middle of town. What about manure control? I mean, there was a lot of issues that we discussed quite thoroughly. And through the subcommittee, it went through from March to October, November of 2002. That's how long it took to even work out the kinks on this. And that was with presenting draft language to them up front, too. I mean, there was there was a lot of discussion that went into the creation of this zoning district. So some of the concerns, like I said, upkeep of the horses, manure maintenance, drainage, odors, what is the proper lot size necessary for a horse to have adequate exercise and care. I had involvement from animal control at the time, helped us on this committee. We had developers, we had a few members of the Planning and Zoning Commission. We very thoroughly looked at this language. It wasn't an overnight, we're gonna allow horses in Rock Springs. It was, a lot of thought went into it. So the issue was, how would the city regulate these concerns? How would we as a city ensure that if we allow horses, these things are going to be addressed? The solution was the PUD process. So as a PUD, like I said, you start with your underlying zoning district, and then you can have, through with the development plan, additional requirements be added onto that development plan. In this case, we chose that rural estate zoning would be okay, however, develop it as a PUD, so not only does the city have control over the setbacks and all that, but also there will be a homeowners association or covenants that will then regulate those things that are outside the city scope. We did not want to become the manure police for these developments, to go out and monitor that. So we took the opportunity and put that burden. It's like, if you want this, fine, but there's going to have to be private enforcement of some of these items as well. So anyways, the committee did recommend finally to the Planning and Zoning Commission in October of 2002. November 13th, 2002, we held the public hearing, and the P&Z approved the subcommittee's recommended language. At the time, the P&Z actually recommended 1 acre size lots. Again, that it had to be developed as a PUD. And that PUD, not only did we set a zoning district size of 80 acres for a PUD, for a rural estate zoning, but we also required in the original language that the PUD itself had to be 80 acres as well. And also to keep anybody from wanting to zone land in the middle of town, we also put a requirement that it had to be contiguous on at least 2 sides to the city-county line, so that it was going to be on the outskirts of town and not right in the middle of the city. So City Council held a public hearing exactly 17 years from tonight's date. So December 17th, 2002, held a public hearing on that. We did 3 ordinance readings. During that time, it went from 1 acre minimum to 2 acre minimum lot sizes. Final reading took place January 21st, 2003. So that's when the language was adopted. So after the language was in place, Dr. Spicer then was able to move forward with his particular project. So in January 2004, we approved his annexation of the 80 acres. Prior to his, North Park Elementary School was annexed, and then he annexed into the city. Through the annexation process itself, we designated the property as rural estates zoning. And then that same month, January 2004, he submitted his concept plan. The preliminary development plan, preliminary plat was approved March 2004, and then the final plat of phase 1 and the final development plan was approved May of 2004. You know, this is very tiny to look at. So what you see here, this is actually the recorded final plat. The only phase that actually has a recorded plat is phase 1. Phase 1 is the only encumbered parcel of land right now. 26 lots within phase 1. Lots range in size from 0.82 acres to 1.67 acres. You're probably wondering, well, that doesn't meet the 2 acre requirement. Again, going back to this is a plan unit development. Plan unit developments can deviate from the underlying zoning requirements. In this case, the discussion was the commons area was going to be like a riding arena, area for which people in this neighborhood could exercise their horses and whatever means, and that helped justify the smaller lot sizes to the commission. Also recorded is the development plan. The development plan itself does actually show 2 phases, which typically the preliminary development plan would show both phases. When you get to final, typically you only see the phase that's going to be recorded. We learned a lot of lessons during this time. This is honestly the first PUD I ever processed too. So looking back in retrospect, is like, we probably would have made sure that just phase 1 was on there, but this was the approved preliminary development plan in a final development plan form, and it was recorded. It does show both phases. Also, in addition to recording this, the homeowners association was established and the restrictive covenants were recorded as well. What I have kind of outlined in the bubble area, those are use restrictions that are listed on there. And they do pertain, they're actually taken right out of the covenants and placed on this document. The intent was to try to encourage people to find out what those rules were before buying property. I can't tell you how many times people buy property and then find out what the requirements are afterwards. So that was an attempt to make sure that these are the requirements, rather than having to dig out a set of covenants and try to muddle your way through the covenants. So just to go over these very quickly, just some of the items. I know you can't read that, so just to quickly, it states that the permitted uses and setbacks of the rural estate zoning apply within here. Single-family residences that are site-built are allowed, and approval from the Design and Review Committee shall accompany all site plan and building submittals. And we do get that when we have a new house going in phase 1. We get usually an email from the homeowners association saying that it was reviewed and approved. Some things that are outside the city's scope of looking at or more covenant issues: minimum living area for a single level home, 2,000 square feet. For a multi-level home, ground level, 1,600 feet. No more than a single residence on a lot. If you have servant quarters or guest quarters, they have to all be under a single roof. Garage door entrances cannot face the front of the property. Accessory buildings must maintain the same architectural look and feel as the residence. Total coverage of the lot by structures shall not exceed 30%. In our R1 district, it's a 50% requirement, I believe. No businesses of any kind or character, no more than 2 horses are allotted per lot. It also outlines, I don't have it in the bubble there, but it also outlines setbacks for horses and things like that. So that is what is approved as of now. So the proposed amendments, this is a new application. My understanding is that there was another application that was reviewed previously by the Planning and Zoning Commission and City Council. That one was for 73 lots. This new application was filed on October 21st, and it is for 55 lots. Just a quick summary: Mustang Drive is no longer a through street between phase 1 and phase 2. No horses are permitted in phase 2, and adjusted lot sizes. The previous submittal that was reviewed, the lots range from 0.24 acres to 0.77 acres. This submittal, the lot ranges from 0.46 acres to 0.83 acres. So lots have been adjusted. Just to kind of show a little bit, I did my little sketch here. So the lots that are showing in red are 0.8 acres. The one up in the corner is kind of an oddball. That's actually 0.83 acres. The green, those lots are 0.75 acres. The one on the bottom, next to the BLM property, is actually 0.78 acres. The purple in the bottom corner, those are a couple just odd lots because they're on that angle there. One of those is 0.68 and the other is 0.5 acres. And then the majority, the blue lots, there's 40 of them, and they range in size from 0.46 to 0.49 acres. So that just kind of shows you the breakdown. Again, Sweetwater Station Phase 1 would be on the right-hand side of that, to the east of that. So the bulk of your council report packet, which is very lengthy, I know, that's actually mostly a summary of the Planning and Zoning Commission meeting. I want to make sure you had as much information from that as possible. The Planning and Zoning Commission, they did hold their public hearing on November 13th, and they reviewed the project against those criteria that we went over a little bit ago, as far as what you can look at for a PUD. And with that, they did give a unanimous recommendation to approve the plan unit development with conditions. And the conditions were that all comments from the October 29th, 2019 utility review meeting shall be addressed on the final plat and or final development plan where appropriate. One of them was to move the pedestrian right-of-way in line with the existing one, and that was addressed. Development, that there has to be coordination between the applicant and the homeowners association prior to the final development plan, final plat submission to address amendments to covenants and recorded development plan notes. And that was actually my comment from the utility review meeting. The covenants that were recorded with Phase 1 do cover both Phase 1 and Phase 2. There's language in there that's not the city's place to interpret that and enforce the covenants. That is a private matter between the homeowners association. Also, as I showed you previously, whether it needed to be or not, this document is recorded. It is showing 2 phases, and it is showing use restrictions. It doesn't say use restrictions just for Phase 1, it says use restrictions. So in the event that this moves forward to a final development plan, there'll have to be some type of clarification at the courthouse as far as which of these use restrictions apply to Phase 1, which apply to Phase 2, because right at the beginning, if you remember, I said that rather than going to the zoning ordinance for administrating properties within a PUD, we look at the development plan, and we can't have 2 conflicting recorded documents. So however that gets resolved, it needs to be for that purpose alone. I also gave a recommendation to adjust the accessory structure setbacks. Previously, they showed as 3-foot setbacks. I'll go over those here in a little bit more detail. And also to provide lot coverage requirements for Phase 2. So the plan that is included in your council packet is actually the amended one that was submitted after the planning and zoning meeting to address those comments that were given at the meeting. It was submitted on December 9th, 2019, and there is a larger copy floating around up there if anybody needs to see it. And I'll go over a little bit of that in a little bit. So the analysis at the Planning and Zoning Commission, I'm gonna look at this. So first thing, again, going back to density can be changed, but it has to comply with the comprehensive plan. So what you have on this screen is the map showing the comprehensive plan, land use map. The arrow is pointing to the area, and it is designated as LDR, which is low density residential. By the comprehensive plan, in an LDR designated piece of property, you can have dwelling unit per acre ranging from 0.5 to 7 dwelling units per acre. So the proposed subdivision of Phase 2 with 55 lots comes to 1.498 dwelling units per acre. So it is well within that range. It's actually on the lower end of the range that is allowable through the comprehensive plan. So that criteria is satisfied. And just kind of, this was a question that came up at the Planning and Zoning Commission, so just to kind of, in case anybody had it here as well. The overall Sweetwater Station PUD, which counts phase 1 and phase 2, with the proposed changes will be 1.07 dwelling units per acre. So that's the total calculation of phase 1 and phase 2. For comparison purposes, the approved development plan of phase 1 and phase 2, the one that's recorded, has a density of 0.79 dwelling units per acre, which is a difference of 0.28. So just to kind of help you with that. Okay, so now for the setbacks, it was my recommendation to look at the setbacks a little bit further. The setback tables have been modified since the planning and zoning meeting. They do reflect the recommendations of staff. However, after the planning and zoning meeting, I need to let you know that their engineer, Mr. Kennedy, did contact me, and there was an error in the table on the development plan that we reviewed at the commission. Lots 36 through 55 should have reflected the setbacks of the smaller lots and not the larger lots. In the actual drawing, the lines were correct showing the setbacks, but the table had an error on it. So the revised plat also does show the accessory structure setbacks that I recommended during the meeting. I felt like a 3-foot accessory structure setback, which is what we have in our R1, R2, R3, that was just way too minimal for these large lots. So with that, what you see in the red, the lots in the red will meet the rural estate setbacks as they are outlined in the zoning ordinance, which would be 30 foot in the front and the rear and corner side, 15-foot interior side setbacks, and then accessory structures will have a 30-foot front and corner side and a 15-foot interior side and rear. That is right out of the rural estate zoning district. They also added a note on there about the lots cannot exceed 30% lot coverage, which is the same as what is required in phase 1. So the lots that are in blue have the modified setbacks. They're not R1 setbacks, but they're not the rural estate setbacks either. So the blue would allow a side setback of 10 feet instead of 15 feet, and a corner of 20 feet instead of 30 feet. And then lot coverage, a 40% lot coverage, so still greater than the R1 zoning district. P&Z also looked at traffic. As discussed already, there is no longer any through access from phase 1 to phase 2. Mustang is going to be shut off. It will remain as a utility corridor, and then with removable bollards so that utility maintenance vehicles could get in there and work as necessary. The amended plat that you have before you does have access from Signal Drive, and it also includes an extension of Summit Drive to the intersection on that location. The previous approved development plan did not have that. It only had the Mustang Drive access and the access onto Signal Drive. So through the preliminary development plan, the amended one that you have before you tonight actually decreases the traffic intensity in phase 1 than what was originally approved. We also looked at land use. Land use will be the same, single-family site-built dwellings. The only amendment really to land use is the fact that horses will no longer be allowed in phase 2 as proposed. Pedestrian ingress and egress. They did take care of lining up the pedestrian right-of-way as recommended in the Utility Review Committee. Open space, phase 1 has 2.35 acres of common area in phase 1. That's as it was originally approved. There was never proposed open space in phase 2 originally. However, fees in lieu of land dedication, which is part of our subdivision requirements, would kick in for phase two since there is not any land dedication in there. Building height, ordinance allows up to 28 feet. That's what's allowed in phase one, and that'll be the same in phase two. My understanding is that there were some concerns regarding views of White Mountain, provided that the structures, they don't exceed the 28-foot requirement, will not block views any more than the lots that were in there already planned. There is not any recorded view shed easements within this area. And also, I'd made a note to the Planning and Zoning Commission. What you see in green there is actually county zoning. That section is actually, I believe, owned by Anadarko, and there's never any guarantees that Anadarko won't sell their property and develop that as county subdivision either. So there's no development restrictions that I can find on that area. So the original date of this meeting was going to be December 3rd. At the request of the applicant, it was moved to today. At the Planning and Zoning meeting, I did say that it was going to be on the 3rd, so I made sure that everybody had notification that the meeting was going to be changed. With that, we actually advertised this public hearing 2 weeks in the Rocket Minor. Also, I sent out letters, public hearing letters again, to everybody within 200 feet of the boundary of Sweetwater Station Addition. Sweetwater Station Addition is phase one and phase two. So 200 feet within that boundary, everybody received letters. At the Planning and Zoning meeting, we had multiple letters that we read into the record. Those were included in your report packet. And then I received multiple letters in support of the application after the Planning and Zoning meeting. Those are also included in your report packet, both under the public hearing and in my report under the resolution. And then we did receive a letter from the Sweetwater Station Homeowners Association, which is found in attachment number 8 to your report. And I also received one letter that came in yesterday evening that was not included in my report, but I turned it into the clerk's office, and I believe that they forwarded it out from Jay Schneider to Kristen. So if not, we might have to read that into the record. Well, he's here. Lastly, as we discussed earlier, PUDs fall under a zoning district, very similar to a zoning district, a mini zoning district. Therefore, they follow the public hearing criteria that's outlined in Wyoming statutes and the city zoning ordinance. Section 13906D3C does state that if there is a written protest against a preliminary development plan signed by the owners of 20% or more of the property within 140 feet of the proposed PUD, the preliminary development plan shall not be approved except upon the affirmative vote of 3/4 vote of all members of the city council. We did receive a petition. It's included in attachment 7 to your report. There are 42 individually owned properties within the 140-foot boundary of the Sweetwater Station Addition. 20% of that would be 8.4 properties. The petition that we received has signatures from 19 of the 42 properties. 17 are actually within the Sweetwater Station Phase 1 area, and 2 are outside of it, but still within the 140 feet. And that's 45% of the properties within the 140. One signature I do need to note was actually outside of the 140-foot radius, so I did make note on that as well. So that concludes my presentation, and with that, I'll return to my seat.
Well, Laura, I do appreciate the overview. Hopefully that answered some questions, provided
I'll keep this running in case
Yeah.
we need to refer to a slide.
if you would. And so with that, I'm gonna open up the public hearing section. Is there anyone wishing to speak on this issue? please come on down. We have several, so, the president of the council is gonna give you a 3-minute timeline to speak. I know several of you have sent letters already, so if you've sent letters, they've probably already read the letters, and by the way, the letter that was sent, they did go to.
Okay, so, yeah. I'm Jay Schneiders, and I live at Lot 19 in Sweetwater Station. So due to the 3 minutes, I'm gonna stick to my script. Hopefully won't ramble. Thank you, members of the council and Mayor Como, for the opportunity to speak about Sweetwater Station PUD, amended development plan. But before I move into my comments, I'd like to thank Laura for all her work that she has put into Sweetwater Station. And that goes back to the early 2000s, as well as everything she's done recently. I mean, it's a lot of hours. I'd also like to thank Laura for the work to clarify the process, because I don't think that was really understood in previous meetings that we've had concerning this project. Lastly, I'd like to thank you for your work on clarifying ordinance 13-906D. One of the points that I do disagree with in the planning and zoning recommendation is that the proposal conforms to the city's comprehensive plan. And although perhaps technically correct as the plan is written, the plan is an oversight, I think, that needs to be corrected. The 80 acres of Sweetwater Station, which is zoned rural estates, really doesn't fit with the designation low-density residential. And this thing is a different animal, and it's just lumped in there with low-density residential. Rural estates should have a separate designation, and if it did, the petition would not have moved forward to Planning and Zoning Commission and in turn to City Council. So because of a drafting issue, we're here today. 13-800.1 Rural Estates Planned Unit Development RE defines the purpose of the RE zone, which is to provide the development at a very low density of single-family detached dwellings in subdivided areas of the community, where it is desirable to maintain a semi-rural environment, particularly within the city-county interface boundary. So that description really does not fit with low-density residential. A more accurate description would be something like very low-density, semi-rural residential. And the horse issue, when you bring that into play, really takes it out of the designation low-density residential. So in the plan, I mean, this colored picture and the graphic, this community should have a separate denotation. The ordinance goes on to say all land zoned RE shall be developed and subdivided as a planned unit development in accordance with section 13.812 of Rock Spring zoning ordinance. Further, the minimum district size is 80 acres. So I mean, this thing is just very different than R1 zoning. Again, it doesn't fit low density residential. Simply an oversight in the plan. Our legal counsel maintains that the language ordinance would have precedence over the ambiguous drafting within the comprehensive plan when they're in conflict. So to be very blunt, we feel the petition has legal issues concerning this subject. I've heard the argument that a property owner should be able to do what they want with their land. And in general, I agree with the statement. And the Spicers did exactly what they wanted back in 2004. Is that my 3 minutes? Am I done?
Go ahead, finish up. Jay.
Okay. At that time, they encumbered, they did exactly what they wanted in 2004. At that time, they encumbered the land with zoning, a PUD for the community, a plat for phase 1. They recorded CCRs that encumbered the entire PUD. Additionally, Spicers had the CCRs printed on the final PUD that was recorded and Laura showed. A couple of years ago, the property owners formed an HOA governing the entire PUD at Tom Spicer's insistence. So at this point, the Spicers can't change what they put in place without an affirmative vote from the HOA. Any change is a civil matter that needs to be addressed by the Spicers and the HOA. The issue should have been addressed prior to the first proposal last March regarding the petition before the council. Well, regarding the petition before the council, I ask that all members of the council honor the will of the overwhelming majority of property owners and vote against the amended development plan. This petition is currently moving forward in preliminary form, and as we all know now, it will not move forward in final form without the support of the HOA. And as we all know, despite rumors to the contrary, the project does not have HOA support. In fact, the vote was overwhelmingly against the proposal, where 19 property owners voted against the petition.
Jay, are you, is anybody else wishing to speak?
I think we just have, two.
Two?
So
Gonna have to-
I'll speed it up.
Okay.
I'll read
I-
faster.
Well, just so you know that, we did get that letter also, with all that,
Okay.
it is in there, so everybody does that.
Okay. So a vote to approve the city council would not only be a vote against the property owners, it would not accomplish anything. I believe approval could actually delay the development, as it would place the petition into a suspended state. One of two things would happen with approval, knowing the petition does not have HOA support. The project could remain stuck until the approval expires, which I believe it's good for a year, at which time maybe a different developer would come forward, and this puts the timeline probably into 2022 for actual development, as they wouldn't even start the preliminary plan process until probably first half of 2021. Second possibility, the parties could get together and work out an acceptable solution. If this were to occur, the process would start all over with the submission of a new preliminary development plan. One thing we all know with absolute certainty, the proposal in front of City Council tonight will never be agreed to by the HOA, and therefore approving the proposal actually makes no sense. The proposal of 55 lots will never be built. Tonight's outcome should be a vote against the proposal, along with a very loud and clear message. Don't waste any more of City Council's time, Planning and Zoning Commission's time, Planning and Zoning staff's time, utility review time, the homeowner's time, etc., with another proposal that doesn't have the consensus of the HOA, the developer, and the property seller. So I'm highly confident that a solution can be developed, but it'll take the Spicers, the HOA, and a developer to work it out. So thank you.
Thanks, Jay. Any questions? Okay, so that 3 minutes turned into about 9. And just so you know, and we did receive all of this information letter, so the council does have every bit of this information. So if you've sent the letter, trust me, the council has read it. They do have it, so. Okay, Fred?
Thank you very much, Mayor. First of all, City Council members, thank you once again for your time and consideration of this very important matter to the 26 land and homeowners of Sweetwater Station. As you heard, the HOA was formed, and my wife Susie was strong-armed by Dr. Spicer to create the HOA, which he asked, and so she's become the neighborhood vigilante that has to check on horses and everything else. So that is a responsibility we've taken on. It hasn't always been fun. By now, you've heard directly from several of us many times, and you've read the transcripts, and I appreciate your time of the planning and zoning meetings. Speaking for myself, learning about this process, the procedures, the PUDs, to zoning, covenants, preliminary, which we're still at, and then final, as Laura and then Jay talked about, it's very complicated. I think we've all learned a lot about this process. I'm sure you agree this is a lot on your plate of city council members, community members at large, and this is a very complicated matter that must be researched, studied to get truth, fairness, and most importantly, trust within the process, the procedures, the community we live in. Quite frankly, Dr. Spicer, who set this up, who handed us this package when we made the decision, along with his sales team, to move into this community. Otherwise, I would have been in the county, quite frankly. Mayor Como, you yourself signed off on this. I understand at the P&Z committee meeting, you stood up and said you'd love and enjoy to live in the neighborhood that was proposed. just imagine how wonderful you'd feel living in an RE compliant neighborhood, and we'd love to have you as a neighbor. And by the way, that beautiful tree you have across the street, something like that would look beautiful in your yard. We'd love to have it in our community. Contrary to the commitments we have heard about PUD has changed over time in 2 acres, we think Laura Clayton cleaned that up. In the several meetings you've heard many different changes and all this didn't happen. Getting the facts from opinions and emotions has been very difficult in this process. I fully understand many people have skin in the games, from the original owners, developers, current investors, builders, realtors, and more. I understand that. My understanding of the process is that the preliminary vote can move forward. However, as Jay said and Laura said, the HOA will have a say before the final proposal is advanced. I respectfully ask the city council members to take the results of the HOA vote, 19 votes against out of 26, as a decisive message. Our HOA voted down the proposed amendment by an overwhelming majority. We simply want what Dr. Spicer led us to believe was going to be built as Phase 2, and remind you that even though Phase 2 was not formally approved in 2004, it clearly was suggested as the final PUD, or along with the final PUD. I'm sorry I misspoke. And his sales team. Phase 2 would be built as proposed 28. Quite frankly, in his words, if it was ever built at all, okay? Which we hope it does. We would like, as Jay said, let's move forward, let's get this process going. We asked that the P&Z would be acceptable. We were challenged by them if we'd have 3/4 acre lots or something smaller. 3/4 acre lots is RE compliant. We proposed that. We had meetings with Rob. He did not want to go forward. We then went to another builder who said he can do that and make money. Caused me to ask, is this really about more money for a few over the backs of 26 people, quite frankly? I respectfully ask the city council members to stop this madness, take the time you need to understand and follow the specific process and procedures, not just hearsay and emotions of investors and those who stand to benefit, and vote this amendment down so we can move towards an RE zone plan that the HOA can support and get something built this spring. We're on board. We want to go forward. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Fred. I'm gonna say the average is 4 minutes. So you're going to speak. Now it's gonna get tight. So we can get through everybody 4 minutes. So is there anyone else wishing to speak? Please come on up.
Mr. Mayor, council members, I'm not going to go into the technical aspects of this. Everybody's actually addressed that really well, but what I'd like to do is ask for your support for this subdivision. When each of you ran for the council seat, I'm sure you all promoted economic development and betterment of the community as a whole. Well, I think now's the time that you got to make the decision and stand up for your belief. This project will infuse many millions of dollars into our community throughout the life of the project and put many people to work. And we all know that this is badly needed in this area and shouldn't be rejected due to a handful of people with their own interests in mind. For this reason, I think you'd be doing a huge disservice to the city of Rock Springs to cast a vote against the project. Please keep in mind that this project was passed unanimously, as everybody said already, by the planning and zoning. The mayor is in favor, the city planner, engineering, the city attorney, as well as numerous home builders, realtors, and many suppliers and tradespeople. Our company has been working in this area for the past 80 years in the city of Rock Springs. And like all of our work, it is our intention to build a subdivision that we can all be proud of and provide housing opportunities for many families who have no voice here tonight. So I'd like to thank you for your consideration and I urge you for your support. Thank you.
Robert, just for the record, just state your name.
Yes, Robert DiBernardi, 4D Development, DiBernardi Construction. Okay, thank you.
Anyone else?
Mike Hayden, Hayden Construction. I would like to thank all of you guys for your time and diligence on this. I know it's been a difficult process, and I just want to thank you for your time, and I hope you will support this project. Does anybody have any questions for me? Thank you.
Appreciate that, Mr. Hayden.
Mr. Mayor, councilors, I'd like to present you with some information. I've served on the P&Z for approximately 2 years now, and there has not been a single residential subdivision make it through the permitting process to date. There's one that has been proposed here recently that's 27 lots. Well, I asked Laura to pull the amount of new homes built in the last year in the city of Rock Springs. That was 54 new homes. In the last 2 years, we haven't provided a single lot for a new home to be built. With 54 going just this last year, this city is in dire need of lots available for residents to build homes on. With that, we've been in a drought of 2 years without providing the home builders a new lot, and all the lots have been basically spent. So we're in a drought. The subdivision process from starting a subdivision until it could be ready for a home builder to get a building permit is at minimum 10 months. That's if everything is streamlined, going perfectly. That means currently you have one other subdivision other than this residential subdivision that would make the construction season so that a home builder could build a lot. So you're looking at, other than this subdivision, you have 27 other lots that could possibly be available, with 54 lots needed per year in the city. That's pretty constraining when you're looking at people wanting to come to the community and have a new home, that we're just pushing them out, not because they don't want to be here, because we're not providing the opportunity for them to be here. And with that, the only other thing I would say is, when you do vote on this, consider the review requirements outlined in 13906. And if you do vote against it, I would like an explanation of how this development does not meet those requirements. Because our professional staff here at the city and at the utility companies that serve the city, their professionals have reviewed this and found them to be completely in compliance with the ordinance. That's all I have.
And your name, record.
Dan Kennedy. Do you have any questions?
Questions, council? Thank you,
Thanks.
Mr. Kennedy. We are without Kristen tonight, so our Kristen is Matt, so could start off. Usually Kristen get up and gavel down, but if you could start off with your name, that'd be great.
My name is Justin. I'm one of the partners in Smart Dwellings. I'm also serving on I just recently was appointed Planning and Zoning Commission, so I have a little conflict feeling getting up and talking, but from our meeting with the Planning and Zoning, and even though I greatly appreciate Laura and the work that she did to involved in this that I think it's fair to say that the RE concept kind of failed in Rock Springs. That at the time of it being introduced, it was there to relieve a need with all the changes in the county. Those demanding the RE are going to the county, and I'm not seeing any demand or very minimal demand for the great big oversized lots, and I myself are I think anything bigger than 7,500 square feet, which everything that's proposed is more than double that. You know, for me personally, is a massive lot, and the development cost, well, the build cost and the responsibility placed by the HOA to do all the landscaping and everything besides just putting in the house. I think that the lot sizes are appropriate for the current demand of even those nicer homes that are nicer than anything I ever deal with. That I urge you the council's support, and I sympathize with the homeowners there that have lost what they envisioned. But as a whole, the community still hasn't been built out after, 17 years. And so I think unfortunately it's failed, and I think we need to move on. Any questions?
Council, any questions? Mr. Lemon?
Thank you.
This time's yours. Councilman Zadi?
Question for us. I sat with Laura last week. Well, explained. I wanted to clarify on this being a preliminary plat. We approve this, then we fine. Now it's been said that we can't approve a final without HOA approval, but couldn't the city still approve this, but then nothing really done? That conflict that would involve prior.
As I,
Development place.
yep, as I stated in my letter to council, and has been kind of mentioned here, the preliminary development plan meets all of the criteria that are outlined and required for a PUD. If this were just a raw piece of land that wasn't tied to anything else, to me, this would be easy decision. I mean, it meets the criteria, move it forward. We can't ignore the fact that even though we don't enforce covenants, that there are covenants out there that would have to at some point be addressed, as well as, again, outlining what restrictions on that recorded document are going to apply to phase 1 and what are going to apply to phase 2, because it would be an administrative nightmare. PUDs are difficult at best to administer and enforce as they are, so we don't need another level of confusion in that. So we need clear recorded documents. So I personally don't see anything that would keep the council from voting for this, other than you're putting that burden back onto the developer that they have to work this out before coming back to the city. So that's completely council's call on that. But going through my book and my checklists and everything, it does meet the criteria at this point. It's just
That's
that
right, I
one
guess.
little sticking point.
Maybe maybe that's a little sticking point, but what we have to look at is what we have in front of us, as far as ordinance, development plans. Not, well, we should have done something past, this should have been. What?
Yes.
Regardless of what covenants that are there, fine. What after?
Yeah, what is before you tonight is the preliminary development plan. And then I review those criteria, what you need to review a preliminary development plan. And I could say many times, say probably once a day, I wish I had a time machine. I could go back and do things differently. But this is what we have before us. This is what we're up against reviewing tonight.
One of the arguments against last time was burden on water, not enough how this would be handled, city water, and, but really, we wouldn't even have answers to that unless this is passed. We have something. So, a lot of those arguments against would actually have an answer to that when it was passed. Then we'd know what the pressure. Water.
And that is correct. Comments such as that did come up at the utility review meeting, that they cannot move forward until they know how many lots are going to be in this development. That was a utility review comment. I honestly did not put a lot of time into reviewing all of the previous comments that were submitted from the zone change application or the previous version, because I am viewing this with a clean set of eyes. This is a brand new application, and I'm going to review it based on those criteria of the book. Hope I answered that. Okay.
Any other questions?
I
Thanks, Councilman Shalata.
know we had this first meeting some time ago. I voted against passing this. And what I did is parties get back to find out compromise that was fair and reasonable for both parties. And when you look at what Mr. Hardy, so some of the letters read that there was that the homeowners association houses there to buy 13 houses separated, coming to some type of solution. I, at this point, I believe, this is my own person thinking that size of the lots, size was great, that sticking some. But going forward, I wish whatever the outcome of this vote is, consider again coming up with honestly, it's best solutions. Don't want to stop development. I don't want anybody to stop. Able down. That's all I have to say.
Any others, council? Any other comments? None? Okay, at this time, I'm gonna close the public, hearing sections and move on to petitions. And I'm going to ask, is there anyone here tonight wishing to address the council on any issue whatsoever? Okay. So. Welcome, Mr. Bingham.
Honorable Mayor Como and City Council, I'm real brief tonight. Just wanted to inform you of some good news that the Board of County Commissioners today signed a contract with Thomas P. Miller for the industrial complex that we've talked about over at the Middle Baxter Road for the targeted market study and the infrastructure study and then implementation plans. So we apologize that it's taken so long through the grant process, through the Wyoming Business Council. We received a $50,000 grant, and then we have signed an MOU with the City of Rock Springs, Green River, and then Sweetwater County for the remainder of the $150,000. The total project cost came in at $145,000, so under budget, barely. But we're there. We're excited to move forward with this project. Timeline, we're looking at about a year from January. Thomas P. Miller will be out here in January. They're from Indianapolis. They are one of the reasons why we picked them was they offered some additional things that the other ones weren't, such as a see, I've got my notes here. a optional site selector and lead generation engagement plan, which the others weren't offering as an option, and it still keeps us under budget. So there's an additional service that they're offering with this to hopefully get a site selector and get an implementation process for that and an engagement list so that we can go off that. So I appreciate Paul Kalsich and the help he's been with on the selection committee. He was a part of the RFP process when we selected it, and appreciate the time and just ask for continued support of the project and continue help from Paul on our committee when we meet in January with the consultant. So that's all I have, Honorable Mayor, so I appreciate your time.
Eric, I appreciate that exciting news. Appreciate your work on that. I just had one question in that, in the planning on that, this first stage, and I know we had to dump it back and go out for rebid. Will utilities be considered? Is that a part of this, the water?
Yeah, so the part of the study, so there's 3 phases to the project, and that's the second phase, and so they are utilizing a local engineering firm to look at that and do an infrastructure plan. So yes, that is a part of this $145,000.
Yeah, it's good to get that moving.
Yes.
Long time
Yes,
since we started that, but we're making headway. So
we are.
question. Thanks, Eric.
Okay, thank you.
Much appreciate it. While you're in town, spend some money, shop, that kind of stuff. Still under petitions. Anyone else wishing to address the council on any issue? This is your time. Hearing none, I'm going to close the petitions section of our agenda and move on to officers and staff reports. Councilman, we have item number 1, the health insurance fund recap, November 2019, and 2, the financial report summary for November 2019. I'd entertain a motion to approve the officer and staff reports in place on file.
So moved.
We have a motion. Is there a second?
Second.
Second's been called. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, this can bring us to the council committee and board reports. We have one item there, Joint Powers Combined Communication Board meeting minutes of October 28th. And I believe not on your agenda, Councilor West would like to give us an update on the 6 cent.
Thank you, Your Honor. As your liaison to the Specific Purpose Tax Committee, many of you know that, you were in attendance too, so those that were, I appreciate it. For our last presentation of the Board of County Commissioners, December 5th, regarding the current status of the 6 cent process, where the total list of the projects we're all the way back up to $182 million. We left that day without much direction or finalization of numbers, which is why I like to share a few bullet points that are simply my opinion, but I welcome your feedback on them to ensure that we're all in unison moving forward as time continues to march on, because I think it's important that we start to take a stand on some of these. So number 1, the next 6 cent tax will not pass without the City of Rock Springs' support. Again, these are my opinion. Rock Springs makes up 54% of the county's population. Number 2, we need the commissioners to determine exactly how much they're willing to float on the ballot. We've heard 80 million, 90 million, 100 million, still with no final determination. It's time to finalize the number that they're willing to allow. Number 3, we want our fair share of this amount, and we need to know from the commissioners how much that's going to be. With Rock Springs making up 54% of the population, I think that carries some pretty significant weight. Number 4, once we know our share, we will decide what projects to put before the public, and we will decide how much goes to infrastructure versus quality of life. We may have our own opinions on their sponsorship projects as well, but at the end of the day, we've been elected to represent the people of Rock Springs, and that should remain our focus.
What was number 4?
Once we know our share, we will determine.
Wanted that
Emphasis on the we.
It seems like that that isn't known for some reason, but I like your number 4 very much, Mr. West.
I'm getting there. I got 4 minutes, right? Some of the projects on their their list that they're looking to sponsor do reside in Rock Springs. But those are county projects which benefit everyone in the county. And I think even some of our sponsorship projects that we've agreed to, you could argue the same. It's also important not to forget that it takes 2/3 of the incorporated municipalities and the county to get this finalized to be on the ballot. I think we've been very respectful in knowing that ultimately the county has the upper hand, but the key word to that sentence was and not solely one or the other. County can't get it done without the incorporated municipalities, and neither can we without them. With that, I would reiterate that without Rock Springs' support, this tax does not stand a chance. 5, we have worked hard, delivered what's been asked of us, and shown selflessness by cutting $18.3 million off the top of our very own infrastructure projects to put other needs and requests before us. To me, that shows fair and decisive governance. With that, my 6th and final bullet point for you, Mayor, would be a recommendation that Mayor Como draft a letter to the Board of County Commissioners highlighting these items and their significance, should you all be in agreement with what I've stated. That's all I have.
Councilman West, I agree wholeheartedly, and if it seems fit, I will draft a letter for everyone's review, and we will send that letter forward.
I've got a pretty good one started.
Okay.
I think it's time. This has been going on. I think we started,
Yeah.
the mayor and I were talking about this earlier back in July.
Yes.
Essentially, we are no further. We continue to cut, and we continue to not have direction and know a final number, and it's time to move on before the public loses faith in us, much like we might be losing faith in the process itself. So that's my 2 cents. Thank you.
I agree. I appreciate your work on this, by the way, and we'll continue plugging forward.
Runner?
Councilman Zadi?
If I can add a little to that, I was there for the entire meeting as well. And it was good to hear that when we look at some of these projects and some of the requests that are out there, the numbers, if you look at the population, some of these per person cost is astronomical. And so it was refreshing to see the commission address that and look at those calculations, kind of reiterate the population factor question. It is frustrating that we don't have an actual dollar amount yet. It's still hovering between 80 and 100. I think. We still have one community out there that has failed to prioritize their projects, for whatever reason, several requests, and that's what kind of holding some of this up a bit, I think, well, to really know what. But I do agree with what Councilor West has said with the bullet points. Hoping we just seemed like the last meeting was just now again a reiteration of what all the projects were at the last 3.
Agreed. Sounds like we continue to be on the same page. We'll move forward with that. Letter and see if we can get this thing. With that, are there any other council committee or board reports necessary? Hearing none, I'd entertain a motion to approve the council committee and board reports and place on file.
So moved, Your Honor.
We have a motion and a second.
Second.
Second called. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? It's gonna bring us to correspondence. You have one letter from the City of Rock Springs to the Joint Powers Fiber Optics Telecommunication Board regarding an upcoming contract expiration for contact communications. Councilors, unless there's questions, I would entertain a motion to approve the correspondence and place on file.
So moved, Your Honor.
Councilman Tate? That was a motion. Do we have a second?
Second.
Second's been called. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Gonna bring us to the bills and claims, councilors. Item number 1, the bills and claims for December 17th, 2019.
Your Honor,
Councilwoman Windor.
I move to approve the bills and claims for December 17th, 2019.
We do have a motion to approve the bills and claims for December 17th, 2019. Second?
Second.
Second. called. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
Stand.
Let the record show. Item number 2, the salaries for December 6, 2019. Councilors, I entertain a motion to approve.
So moved, Your Honor.
We have a second? I'm gonna be all
Second.
shacked up now.
I was all screwed up, sorry.
Second.
I didn't know what to do. She went quiet on us.
We have a second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay,
Sorry.
counseling over that ordeal. This can bring us then to finished business. Councilors, our city attorney has drafted, a lease. This is the, lease on the open space, the parking area on Blue Sage Way. If you've had time to take a look at it, what I would like is comments from your direction or a voice vote, if everybody's okay with this, that we would use this for any individual that would be interested in seeing this property. Do you have a comment? Mr. President?
How did we come up with the amount for the annual lease fee?
The $10?
Yeah, $10 a year.
Counselor Savage, I just pulled it out of the air. It's a negotiable. So I just put a figure in
Oh,
there
oh, I
because the
see.
document
Okay.
required one. So
So that's something we're gonna discuss.
that could be certainly a topic of discussion.
And so when we address the language, get this lease developed, will it offer to everyone or just to Mr. James?
Counselor Savage, as I stated earlier in the discussion, that Mr. James is the only individual who's expressed any interest in leasing this particular piece of property. It certainly is a piece of property that could be leased to anyone for that purpose.
Mr. James, you can come down in case we have any questions. Mr. James is here, if there's a question. Or, Mr. James, do you have questions? You've read the lease?
I read the lease. I would actually like to express interest in purchasing it because I'm not overly thrilled with the lease itself.
What, give us an idea of what you're not overly thrilled with.
Mainly the, Mr. Mayor, the part where, at any time the city may, in writing, give me a 30-day notice that they can buy it back or terminate the lease after I've done the improvements to first-class standards. And, well, I don't like that part. So I could put all this money into
So
it.
you're saying you don't trust government?
At all. Not as far as I can throw it.
That's just, I'm sure, a
Not to say that
standard.
you would do it, but not to say the next administration won't do it.
Councilman Schlada.
I was there selling.
That's what I'm wanting to do. But
After the
with the
bid
same
process.
exact easements that I'm wanting on there. So no profit making with the campers, trailers on there. You know, everything that I'm currently wanting to do, I'd like those same easements placed on there,
Restrictions.
on the restrictions.
Yeah, so the restrictions would be exactly the same.
Correct.
Lease or sale, and then they would carry over if it was sold.
Correct. So only the neighborhood or the Blue Sage Way residents would be able to park there type scenario. You know, everything that I was planning on doing would be on there. So
Councilman
How,
Savage.
how do we know you're not profiting?
however you want to verify, I mean, you can.
Well, if you don't trust us, how do we trust
Yeah.
you?
Exactly. People that are untrustworthy usually aren't trustworthy.
I'm not sure how you want to verify. I mean, I can. However you want to check up, it's up. I mean,
I think this is what we were running down that road just because of the
right.
public property, the lease with the restriction where we started, and then the talk started moving towards, well, maybe we should just sell it. Council, I think it's really our decision one way or the other, but either way, the restrictions do need to stay there, so we
Right.
don't, changes that don't fit.
Your Honor,
So, Councilman Wendorf.
so basically it would be a service for the residents on Blue Sage.
Correct, but
It
I'm
would just be there. I
it'd
mean,
just be there,
free
right?
of charge.
Right.
Okay.
And I go on record, I can give some sworn statement or whatever I need to do that I will not charge. Whatever I need to do.
The other issue was, I think, from the discussion from the P and Z, but, was the improvements, so you still are willing to do the improvements on the lot.
Right, but just the gravel that we were talking about. And then
Drainage.
I also was thinking too, instead of the concrete, some sort of other hard surface like steel grating or something like that, you know, just something that would still get the same effect of concrete.
Oh, for the apron?
Right. But, you know, some other alternative, but still be in compliance with the
Is the
ordinance.
council interested in, sell or lease?
Your Honor, I,
Councilman Zani?
as I've been kind of helping and working along and talking to Tom for a while now, and I understand his concern. This governing body, but what's gonna happen for you, what the decision, put in so much money on improvement.
and maintenance and
And so if talking with, Mr. Beckwith and what can be done, strict, I feel better with the sale. I think that was one of the things that, hindered us from moving forward last time, was once it's sold, we control. But actually maintain that control within, so.
Yes. So, councilors, first off, we have several of these lots we discussed before in several different areas, neighborhoods, that it just doesn't make sense that they sit there and they, acquire weeds and everything else, that it would be useful if neighboring residents that lived in that subdivision could utilize these parcels to store vehicles, ATVs, RVs, whatever it may be, because they just end up on the street. Seems like everyone has at least two or three. So this is where this originated. I just, think it's a great idea. I still think we're gonna be dealing with this on an individual basis type of thing, some maybe at least, some maybe sale, but, I would entertain a motion at this point, to, move towards a sale then, other than a lease. Then we'll direct, Rick forward with that agreement that, forward at the next meeting. Just in case this was, maybe the avenue that we were going to take, we had, an appraiser working in the area on the YWCA. This was across the street, so I had him include this in his, it will require an appraisal, so he was there, so I think we will have that covered by the.
Your Honor, I guess I want to add, so there's no confusion, with the improvements. I mean, is this something that you're doing all on your own, or with the
Yes.
other neighbors kind of contributing some money?
then
So I mean, so that, not to get confused, oh, you were charging people, no, they're not proper. I can just see something coming up, and someone saying, oh, see, you're charging.
no, the neighbors already said that they would contribute since they would be using it as well, that they would contribute. I'm not
Contribute as
charging
improvements, but
anyone anything or asking them. They just said, we'll pitch in. So,
Speaking about pitching in, just so we don't go down the road here, which I think we will eventually, the appraisal comes in at $30,000. And the city makes a decision to sell it for whatever it may be. Are you, what's your, I guess we need to know what, are you aware there's going to be a price for this lot?
I'm aware there's going to be a price, but if it comes in at $30,000,
Well, we have
I'm
no idea.
I'm also hiring my own appraiser as well, so I'm not sure if I'd be more than happy to have my own appraiser, so the taxpayers don't have to pay for one.
Well, this was, actually, we were doing one right across the street.
Oh, you are already doing it, so,
Your
okay,
Honor, any restrictions put on that counted
yeah.
appraisal, you know, so I mean,
Have you already, I mean,
Exactly, that's, so it would reflect that value based on restrictions that, because, if the restrictions are set forth on the parcel, surely when somebody came in appraiser buy, they would know the value is much different than whether they were going to build a
yeah.
duplex, whatever.
Since this is undeveloped,
Rick, go ahead.
So you know, council body did talk to the appraiser and asked the proper context of the street. This is parking, will be appraised. So, I think you almost also want to consider consideration of not making profit. Profit is some costs going can restrict this. But I think say costs by
Yeah.
charging rent and so forth. And it should also be made clear that this will be part of the bidding process. So will not pricing simply sell it to Mr. rather than seeing it to Mr. successful as in
Correct.
Your Honor,
Councilman West?
I mean, it's just sitting there and nothing's happening with it. I get that side of it, so why not? But the irony is, you know, you get these developments that come in, and in lieu of having to build a park, they're basically giving us land. And I was in a meeting the other day that said like $1,000, so they don't have to invest into a park. I mean, it seems like maybe we need to change our zoning rules or
Yes.
regulations to prevent some of this. I mean,
We're having those exact discussions.
Okay.
We went through many years, and Laura might want to chime in, she was here, but we had many subdivisions, back in the day. We were doing 8, 10, 12 subdivisions higher. Oh, well, that was a close number, 42. And so then there was this need for green space, and boy, okay, we need a park, and so they got into this. Pretty soon we had way too many parks, and they're hard to take care of. That's a lot of resources. We know that. And so then it was, you know, land in lieu of, and they end up being weed infested. Not so glamorous portions of the land, usually a drainage, you know, a corner that didn't fit, chopped off somewhere. And we don't want to do that anymore. So, yes, that change will looking at some.
and then
I'm
just
glad to have Laura back, by the way. It's nice that Laura's back with us. She's not sitting idly by. I can tell you that much. Councilman West, of that answers
Oh, I was
your
just
question.
curious if we could turn it to an RE zoning for those sections and get the lots down.
Yeah,
Your
for two
Honor.
horses.
Your Honor. Your
Mr.
Honor.
James, oh, Mr. Savage.
Oh, so why couldn't this have, homes built on it? Yeah. If you have an answer.
Oh, here we go.
I'll be short this time. This was developed as a PUD. Again, love PUDs. The land that we're talking about was actually, like Mayor Como said, it was by the requirement of the PUD ordinance that a certain percentage of land had to be set aside as open space. That's under the PUD ordinance. Under the subdivision ordinance, it's called park space. So we got conflicting terminology between the two. So this was set aside as that park space. One of the things I discussed at the Planning and Zoning Commission meeting was this was a time that we couldn't make lots fast enough in Rock Springs. We were looking at trying to get lots that were more affordable for people to move into. That was definitely a need at the time. This PUD was approved for that purpose. And the open space was just, that is our standard in our ordinance, is give open space. The alternative is fees in lieu of. As Councilman West said, that needs to be switched. We need to have the fees in lieu of as the requirement, and then if there is a proper property to dedicate that meets our park plan, then that would then be dedicated. But that's the way it
I
was.
think it should be park / RV storage? Because that's
For
really,
these,
I mean,
yes.
if you drive around town, I'm gonna tell you,
Yep.
you may have received a citation on your RV, I have, that's parked on the
Yep.
street. I mean, it is an issue because, several people don't have, especially in a duplex situation, you may share a driveway. You're not gonna put, you know, Wyoming residents have 2,500 square feet of living space and 6,700 square feet of RV space.
Yep.
They buy large toys, but they're also dangerous on the street. We can't sweep, we can't remove ice, we can't remove snow. There needs to be a fix for this.
Yep. And most likely, the ordinances that we do have were probably cookie cutter ordinances that were taken from another community from who knows where. And we really need to look at our ordinance as far as what is best for Rock Springs residents and not just nationwide. So
I'm not sure if you answered.
why they couldn't be,
Yeah,
well, either
it
way,
can't-
it has
because it's
to,
o- Because it's designated open space, it can't have a structure, Your Honor. But it-
no.
Council,
But it can't have but it can have parking on it. Is that what you're saying?
It can have parking on it because we took it to the Planning and Zoning Commission as a use exemption, and they determined for this case, due to the physical constraints of that PUD and the lack of parking, that we would allow, the Planning and Zoning Commission would allow parking as a use on that property. Otherwise, it would just have to be used for park or open space land, but we took that step already to get P and Z's blessing on that.
Councilman Zadi?
Well, when I look at this aerial map, the other end of the street, the lots are wider and they start to get down to that property there. I think it's hard pressed setbacks to build it. Why they gave us that. And
That's what happens, subdivision designed with trying to meet so many lots, square footage, everything else, and it's usually the leftover fluff turns into, go around town and see these weird parks, why they're shaped like a triangle or a nail or something like that, that's pretty much what happened. Councilman Zapata?
I'm just saying, question. Vote.
Oh, call for the question. So with that, I would entertain a motion, to move the direction from a lease to, a sale and have our legal, department work up, an agreement. We're already well on our way with the appraisal, so council, what's your pleasure? We do have a motion to,
Sale.
sell, this subject property versus lease. Is there a second to move in that direction? Second. Been called, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Are there any opposed?
No.
Okay, let the record show, we have one in opposition and we'll move in that direction. And I believe, by next meeting, we should have some. Okay, that, finishes our unfinished business. We're gonna move on to new business items. So number one, the request for an approval of an application for a transfer of retail liquor license from K Street LLC located at 131 K Street, Rock Springs, Wyoming. Councilman, what is your pleasure?
Your Honor.
Councilman Shalata,
Approve this request.
we have a motion to approve. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second's been called. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Are there any opposed? Okay, glad that you sat here that long for that. Item number two, the request for approval of the following bingo and pull tab license applications for 2020. Number one, the American Legion Archie Hay Post 24. Number two, the Young at Heart Senior Center. Number three, the Fraternal Order of the Eagles, number 151. Council, this is gonna require a voice vote. I'd entertain a motion to approve this.
So moved, Your Honor.
We have a motion. Do we have a second?
Second.
We do have a second. Roll call.
Demas,
Yes.
Date. Yes. Windorf,
Yes.
Halter. Yes. West,
Yes.
Savage,
Yes.
Shalata,
Yes.
Zadi,
Yes.
Mayor Como.
Yes. And item number 3 are the request from Square State Brewing for a malt beverage permit for Carrie's Access Awards on January 17th, 2020, from 6 p.m. to 9 p.m. at the Sweetwater County Events Complex. Councilors, what's your pleasure?
Your Honor,
Councilman Shalata?
move to approve this request.
We do have a motion to honor this request. Do we have a second?
Second.
Second has been called. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Are there any opposed? Let the record show. This is gonna bring us on to our resolutions. We have one, resolution 2019-163.
A resolution approving and accepting major amendments to the Phase 2 portion of the preliminary development plan, preliminary plat of the Sweetwater Station Edition, a plan unit development within the corporate limits of the city of Rock Springs, Sweetwater County, Wyoming, submitted by 4D Development and located in Federal Lot 4, Section 16, Township 19 North, Range 105 west of the 6th Principal Meridian, Rock Springs, Sweetwater County, Wyoming.
Council, what's your pleasure?
Your Honor,
Councilman Tate?
move to approve resolution 2019-163.
We do have a motion to approve resolution 2019-163. Is there a second?
Second.
Second, it's been called. Roll call.
Counselor Tate,
Yes.
Windorf,
Yes.
Halter, West,
Abstained.
Savage,
Yes.
Shalata,
Yes.
Dottie, Demus,
Yes.
Mayor Como.
Abstain. That is 7. 7, yes, 0, no, 2, abstain. Resolution 2019-160 does pass. Councilman, at this time, I would entertain a motion to adjourn into an executive session to discuss litigation.
So moved, Your Honor.
Do you have a motion? Do we have a second?
Second.
Second has been called. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay.